when fake news causes, on a $500 billion asset, a move of 7 to 8% in minutes, is it going to push the SEC to approve a spot ETF? Is it going to convince more people to join in and start investing in crypto? Or is it going to hurt crypto? It went to 30,000. Now it did reverse and it did come back down, but the point is, again, is that weirdly enough, the chart kind of was telling us that there was still a positive bias on Bitcoin and to expect a move up.
Experienced trader Gareth Soloway, drawing from his 2 decades of experience, examines daily charts indicating pump and dump situation. After a significant surge in price, driven by false reports of the approval of a spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, the original cryptocurrency has managed to stabilize its gains. However, the situation suggests the potential for further price increases if an actual approval were to occur. Notably, a misleading announcement regarding the United States Securities and Exchange Commission's endorsement of a spot Bitcoin ETF was initially shared by Cointelegraph. Subsequently, this erroneous information quickly propagated through news outlets, including Benzinga and Reuters, and even appeared on Bloomberg terminals, all on October 16. The price of the underlying cryptocurrency reacted with an immediate surge. In response to the original news, Bitcoin shot up to its highest price tag in over 2 months of just under $30,000. Subsequently, Bitcoin returned to $28,000 and currently holds slightly above that level. The incident led to market liquidations with over $104 million in long and short positions. Soloway accurately labels this as a pump and dump situation. He believes that events like this damage cryptocurrency's reputation with potential investors. While anticipates the approval of a spot ETF, he notes that actions like this don't speed up the approval process. The latest report published by CryptoQuant indicates that if a spot Bitcoin ETF is approved in the US, Bitcoin could become a $900 billion asset, and the total market value of the cryptocurrency market could reach $1 trillion. Now, let's shift our focus to a video.
But I'm calling it a pump and dump, guys, because there is no way that someone didn't buy Bitcoin, then somehow release this fake news and make money on it. I'm just being honest with you. This stuff doesn't just materialize out of thin air with no one having some ulterior motive. Now, Cointelegraph is the one that broke this. I don't know, and again, it broke the fake news, so it's whatever it is. But obviously, this is, and I'm just going to be flat honest. If you go on crypto Twitter, X Twitter, whatever you talk about, there is a lot of animosity towards the SEC and Gary Gensler. And listen, I can understand that. The crypto space wants the freedom. They don't want to be hampered. They don't know the rules to the game of crypto, like what is a security, what's not, what's this, what's that. But at the same time, when you see a move yesterday like this, and it turns out to be caused by news that the fake news, and let me say this again, fake news that basically the Bitcoin ETF, the spot ETF, was approved, this is honestly kind of why you need the SEC. You need regulation here. You need to have things in alignment. There needs to be an investigation by the SEC into this to find out who was placing big bets on Bitcoin. And remember, when you're in the crypto markets, you can use like 100x leverage. So you can literally put a very little money up, and if you get the move to go in your direction, you can make millions of dollars off of a very small amount of money. Essentially gambling, but not in this case, because you were, or whoever this was going to filter this news through, or fake news, and get it to pop. Now, what's fascinating about this, and that I'm going to digress from that side of things. And again, bottom line, I will say this, yes, the crypto markets need the SEC, or you need some regulatory body that is monitoring, the crazy house, essentially. All right, so when we look at this chart, though, if we remember yesterday, and this is fascinating, what was my bias yesterday in the game plan? What was the chart telling us? Well, remember we had this right here. We broke below it, but we stayed above this trend line, right? We had this trend line all the way up here, all the way up to these levels, and all the way up there. And what I said to you, especially as we were starting to move back up, and at that point yesterday, we were probably getting back, I think we were back in that range, is that even when we were down here, you still had a positive bias, a neutral to positive bias. Once you recapture here, you then have a positive bias for a target of at least 29,000. Well, what we saw in Bitcoin yesterday is it went to 30,000. Now, it did reverse and it did come back down, but the point is, again, is that weirdly enough, the chart kind of was telling us that there was still a positive bias on Bitcoin and to expect a move up. I didn't know this move was going to come. Obviously, I would have made a lot of money if I did. But nonetheless, that was an amazing move yesterday. And listen, the spot ETF is going to get approved. But going back to the whole discussion before, the question you have to ask ourselves is, when this happens, when fake news causes, on a $500 billion asset, a move of 7 to 8% in minutes, is it going to push the SEC to approve a spot ETF? Is it going to convince more people to join in and start investing in crypto? Or is it going to hurt crypto? And that's the sad part about this. This was someone out there, and again, I'm not pretending to know who, but this was someone out there that for a gain for themselves ultimately hurt the crypto markets. Because again, if you're a grandma and you're looking at this and you hear about fake news and you see this whip, are you going to be like, oh yeah, let me go open a crypto account? No, you're not. You're going to be like, holy cow, this is shady. Let me stay away. And the same thing with the SEC. Now, do I think that ETF, spot ETF, is going to get approved? Yes, eventually it will. But it certainly doesn't help getting it approved sooner. I will say that.
Wall Street drifted to a mixed finish Tuesday following the latest signal that the U.S. economy remains solid, though perhaps too strong for the Federal Reserve's liking. The S&P 500 edged down by 0.43, which is well less than 0.1%, to 4,373.20 after flipping between small gains and losses through the day. According to Soloway, when we examine the long-term trend in the S&P 500 chart, it raises significant concerns. The situation might result in a notable market correction, potentially taking the index down to levels as low as 1,200 to 1,500. Bitcoin's performance has deviated from its usual correlation with the S&P 500. Presently, it has clearly surpassed and outperformed the S&P 500. Now, let's shift our focus to a video.
Basically, the trend of the market going back, and then here was the dot-com bubble, the real estate bubble, and then where the Fed began printing money, look at what the markets did. Now, the reason why I want to show you this is because a lot of people are saying, oh, we can go to new all-time highs, we can continue this bull market. I'm not saying you can't hit all-time highs. There's always a chance of that. But what I am seeing here, and I think we can all agree, is that if you look at the longer-term trend of this market, do we think that the markets in the longer term, when I zoom out to go to the 1950s, do you think that this move, which dwarfs, I don't even know if you guys can see back here, it's so flat. All right, this was the market all the way up to the dot-com and then to the financial crisis where the Fed intervened and printed money. And my point of this is that if you look at the trend, the long-term trend of this market, what are we actually doing here? All right, well, if you look at the long-term trend, you could argue that you have a couple trend lines here that potentially are telling you that we could be in some major, major trouble. And again, this is something that would be the greater kind of evil kind of situation where you got an epic depression. But if this happens and you saw a retrace to these levels, and I don't think it's totally out of this world, you're looking at a longer term trend through this low here that actually takes you down to 12 to 1,500 on the S&P 500. Maybe we don't go back to this level down here. Maybe that doesn't happen. But if you're someone who doesn't think that at least we're going to come back to these levels over here, which is the COVID lows, right? If you don't think we're coming back into that range, I think honestly that's silly to think that you're not. All right, so there has to be a reversion. Things do not go up for infinity. If you throw a ball in the air, at some point it reaches its highest point and it starts to come in. And you could pump a balloon as high as you want, as much helium as you want, and it'll go up for a certain amount of time. At some point, that has to be taken out of the system, right? The helium eventually escapes and kind of wears down, and the balloon comes back to Earth. And my point here again is that we are at a point where they pumped that helium in, all right, whether it's from the financial crisis or from the COVID low, and you have had this meteoric rise. At some point, whether we go to new all-time highs up here or not, you're going to revert back down to some of these levels. And so it's very important. We can live in a hopium world. We can live where we think everything is perfect. But for me at least, I have made a lot of money by recognizing moves ahead of time and not necessarily changing how I'm investing today, but by being aware of what could come tomorrow and just being a little bit more alert, not living in a bubble, not putting my head in the sand. And that, again, I think is worthwhile.
Bitcoin's price action on the false alarm showcases the potential impact of a spot ETF approval on the general market sentiment. This news caused delight among many investors and traders who were counting on the positive effect of such a product on the cryptocurrency market. The SEC warns against relying on unofficial sources, suggesting that the Bitcoin ETF approval decision will come directly from the agency. Do you think the SEC will eventually approve a Bitcoin ETF? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. That concludes our conversation for today. If you found this content informative, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for the latest updates. Thank you for being here with us.